Okay, are we ready?
Yep.
All right. All right, I'd like to call to order this meeting of the North Carolina Planning Commission and Parks Commission. It's February 15th, and it's 6:30 p.m. First, we're going to start with the roll call for the Planning Commission, and then we'll do the Parks.
And so the standard roll call, why don't we actually do introductions?
Okay, good. All right, let's start with Brian.
Hi, I'm Brian Oliver. New last name is Fitzgibbon, but I am a planning commissioner and president.
Fabulous. Hannah?
Hannah Teal, planning commissioner.
Harold Tremolata, your newest planning commissioner.
Our newest one.
Welcome.
Welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Moved to North Bend a couple years ago, actually neighbors with Giuliano here. And I have two twins that are 5 years old that go to Ofsted, boy-girl twins, and a soon-to-be 2-year-old this week. So we got 3 kids over in Tanner, and I work for the strategic real estate at Amazon. I've been doing corporate development and real estate for about 18 years now, in California previously, and across the country now, on that level, so.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Julian?
Juliano Pereira, planning commission, president.
Olivia Moe, planning commission.
James Bovers, planning commissioner.
Susan Torgerson, Chair, Planning Commissioner.
And then also we have online, Tim Telovich.
Okay, yeah, so Tim is one of our planning commissioners,
Park.
from Parks Commissioners,
Ryan Duncan, Parks Commission.
Eric Thompson, Parks Commissioner.
and Mina Red, Parks Commission Chair.
And I'm Rebecca Deming, the Community and Economic Development Director.
And Mike McCarty, principal planner.
Fabulous. And how many Park Commissioners are there?
So we don't have Paige Robbins, who's our youth representative, we don't have Mark Carrera or Kyle Braun.
Okay, so do you have a quorum, because you have at least one?
Yep.
Yes, there's.
All right, so we have a quorum for both commissions. All right. We did it. Next, we're gonna do the public comment for non-agenda items. What that means is there'll be no dialogue between the commissioners and the public, but the commissioners are listening and considering your comments. At a later date, we're gonna do the public comments for the agenda items, which most of you probably are here for. But if you'd like to talk about a non-agenda item right now, just raise your hand and you can speak, or if you're in the chat room, do the chat room, raise your hand deal. And then, we'll call on you, state your name, your address. You'll have about 3 minutes to share. And would you like to do any non-agenda items? Anybody online? All right, well, that was fast. All right, so next item. We need to approve our minutes from the previous meeting. We should have minutes from February 1st as well as January 18th. And did the planning commissioners, did you get a chance to review them? Okay, if there's anybody who'd like to make any corrections or changes to the minutes, please let us know. If not, would a commissioner like to make a motion to approve?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the planning commission meetings for January 18th and February 1st, you said?
Mm-hmm. Is there a second?
I can wait a second.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Vote, planning commissioners, like to approve?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, passes. How about the park commissioners? Would you like to go through your minutes?
Sure, we have January 25th minutes in the agenda packet. Our prior meeting, for any of the commissioners present or online. The chance to review, are there any comments? Corrections, notes? Okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I can make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
All those in favor? I see Tim, I don't.
And do you have a vote there?
He's muted. There we go.
If you can hear me, that's a vote of aye.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you, Tim. Good to hear you. And anyone opposed? Has been approved.
Fabulous. All right, we're now on to agenda item number 4. Today, we're gonna hear more information regarding the park elements of the comprehensive plan by the city. And presenting is Mike McCarty. He's going to share, the proposed amendments, then we'll have a public hearing, and then the commissioners will have an opportunity to chat about it. So, we'll start with Mike McCarty.
All right, thank you. So again, Mike McCarty, Principal Planner of the city, and I'm happy to present the amendments that the Parks Commission has been working on for the last several months. So the Parks element, just to give a little bit of a broader context, is the guiding document that serves for our planning of parks and trails and open spaces within the city. So a Parks element is one of the required chapters or elements of a comprehensive plan under the Growth Management Act. So it's an integral component of our comprehensive plan. So it provides an inventory of our park facilities, a description of what we have, where we've got it. It provides an assessment of what our community's needs are. It provides levels of service standards for different types of facilities. So for example, a number of, one ball field for so many thousand of population. It provides goals and policies on how we're planning to develop our park inventory and our park facilities. And it provides a capital improvement plan. And that's a very specific list of projects that the city intends to eventually develop based on that park plan and the public input that we've received. And that capital improvement plan has a long-term plan, a 20-year plan of our kind of broad dreams, and it has a 6-year prioritized plan, top priority projects that we want to do with available funding. So for the purposes of the update, why are we doing this? The first part of it is that this is a part of our comp plan, and cities are required to update their comprehensive plans every 10 years under the Growth Management Act. So we're in that cycle now. The parks element is actually one of our first elements that we're updating. We have a due date at the end of 2024. So we're a little early out of the box for this one, but we have a number of other elements for our comp plan that'll be in the work of the year ahead. So we're updating this also to make sure that we're eligible for grants. So if we have an updated parks element that then gets certified by the State Recreation and Conservation Office, that then helps us to be eligible for grants from the state, from federal agencies, and others. And that grant funding is very important for us to be able to provide those park resources. We can't do it alone. We don't have enough money. So grants are critically important. We're also just providing an update to reflect an update to outdated information. We've developed a lot of our park facilities that were on our parks capital facilities plan over the last 6 years. And it's great. We can check those off. Those are done. And it's time to reprioritize and find out what else the public's interested to do. So the primary purpose, though, beyond all that, is just we want to reflect our community. We want to be responsive to what our community wants. And so we've had a lot of input to date on that. So a little bit of a description of the review that we've done to date. The Parks Commission met several times during 2022 to consider amendments. And we've provided outreach in a number of ways. We've provided the Parks element, or we've created a Parks element update page on our city website. We've done a number of press releases and social media posts. The Parks Commission and staff hosted booths at two of the farmers market events this summer. We held a public workshop on this Parks element on November 30th, and now we've got this public hearing. So I want to hear your comments tonight. This isn't the end of the process. In addition to all of that, we conducted a community parks survey during the month of September of last year. And that was really critical, getting feedback to inform our Parks element update. We received 537 responses to that survey, so it's pretty substantial. Not a scientific survey, but that was a pretty substantial response, giving us a good indication of what the community wants. So as far as the contents of the update, what have we done in our Parks element? The first thing is our population forecasts. Obviously, the last time that we did a major update was 2015, and we've got new population projections and new current population figures for 2022 from the State Office of Financial Management. So what we want to do is plug those numbers in, and those projections then inform our levels of service standards, which are based on population, to update, to know what types of facilities and numbers of facilities that we need. We have revised some of our level of service standards based on the feedback that we heard from the public in our survey information. We've updated our Parks Capital Improvement Plan, again, based on public feedback that we received from the survey and other means, to make sure that we're developing projects consistent with what the public desires. And then we've got just some general minor amendments, some minor amendments to policies, some minor amendments to our parks element maps, a lot of that reflecting just updated information. So we've added a number of parks and park and trail facilities since the time of our last update. So informational updates to reflect that. I want to note we have received written comment for this public hearing. Some of you I've handed the letter to that we received from the Snoqualmie tribe. If you didn't get that yet, I've got a copy here. You got one? Anybody else?
It's been emailed.
Yes.
Yeah, I emailed that earlier. And then we also received a email from Craig Glazier that's in your packet, before I had to pack it out, so you've got that. So I want to turn it over to our Planning Commission Chair, Susan Torgerson, to actually run the hearing. We'll take comments, maybe we'll start with comments in person, and then we can go to comments from folks that are joining online. After the public hearing is closed, if there's questions that are raised during the public comment, at the discretion of the chair, I'll come back and try to answer those questions to the best of my ability. And again, this is not the end of the process. We want to take your comments because we have received a number of comments. I'm not looking for a recommendation from the commissions tonight. I think there's a lot of things to consider. And what I want to do is go back and do that with the commissions, and then also bring back some proposed edits to the element to reflect some of that. So let me turn it over to Chair Torgerson to begin the hearing.
Okay, so now we're at the part where we get some public comment. I'm going to just remind everyone that you want to raise your hand. I'll call on you. You'll have 3 minutes. We would like you to introduce yourself, give your address, and we'd love to hear what you have to say. Is there anyone who would like to go first? All right, go ahead.
Good. My name is Ward Bettis, 225 Sydney Avenue South. I actually live on the North Bend. And I'm here along with a number of my neighbors to talk about Riverfront Park. Some of you may have heard some of this information before, so please excuse if I repeat some of it. But Riverfront Park, at least the right levee side, is not really a park. It is, and it should remain a natural area of trees, a wetland, a FEMA floodway, but mainly as a flood storage area. North Bend experiences flooding. During the last major flooding event, 6 of the 11 homes adjacent to Riverfront Park had significant amounts of water in their backyards. My backyard had 5 feet of water. My neighbor to the north had 6 feet of water. My neighbor to the south had over 4 feet of water, and Riverfront Park had 5 feet of water. The levee was not overtopped. This is groundwater. It accumulates in the Snoqualmie Valley River Basin when we have a multi-day heavy rainfall, followed by cold, wet snow in the mountains, followed by a Pineapple Express with snow melting. The water has no place to go, so it accumulates, placing our homes in danger. I would recommend to these committees that the Park Comprehensive Plan add update wording that commits the City of North Bend to maintain the right side of the levee portion of the Riverfront Park in a natural state. And by the way, they need more maintenance over there. Currently, there are a lot of trees that are dying from the invasive ivy thickets. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'd just like to make a couple of quick points.
Name and address first.
Oh, Gardner Vintage, 205 Taylor Avenue South.
What's our name again?
Gardner, is my first name, Vintage,
Gardner.
205 Taylor Avenue South.
Thank you.
I read your packet and the draft material in it, and there was kind of a pleasant surprise in it for me, because I've never seen this description of Riverfront Park before. This is the first time I've seen it described as being both sides of the river. In the past, in public meetings I've been to, much of the attention has been to the, I guess what we're calling the right side of it, which is, according to your packet, about 4 acres. And there are 22 acres on the other side. And as I think probably all of you know, certainly the Parks Group knows, that there's currently a study going on about uses and potential development or whatever on the right-hand side. And it's all focused around the idea of the public wanting access to the river. And what's striking about what's in your packet is that only about 20% of Riverfront Park is on the right-hand side. 80% of the park is actually on the other side, including a dike, as we obviously have on our side. And the study that's going on is only looking at a piece of it. It seems to me odd that in the process of looking at a park, particularly with a focus on its river access, that we're ignoring one side of the river. The study is only looking at our side. And so I would urge you to look at both sides, because I think in the context of access to the river, both sides have to be taken into account. That's the first. The second is a broader view of what Mr. Bettis just said, which is, there's the map, there's the river. We all know there's flooding here, and I hope as you consider all of your parks and open space, some consideration will be given to their value as flood storage during these critical events that we have. We look at swings, we look at open space, tennis courts, all those things. I hope you would consider with every single park the value that they have in storing flood water. Particularly in our neighborhood, this is the South Fork. It's the first of the forks to flood. It floods very quickly because it comes down very steeply from the water. It rises very quickly, and it falls very quickly. My backyard can be 5 feet under at 11 o'clock, and when I wake up in the morning, there's very little there. So we have these critical events, and having storage that doesn't take homes out, damage other property, is extremely important. That happens to be one of the functions of the right side of Riverfront Park. I don't know on the other side how the mall, for instance, would benefit from that, but I just hope you would keep that as a consideration. They have considerable value for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
If you don't mind, I'm not going to stand, but my name is Sandra Martin Kevin, and I live at 223 Taylor Avenue South here in North Bend. And I'm just going to read what I wrote, and I'll give it to you all.
That's great.
So I have lived at 223 Taylor Avenue South in North Bend for over 31 years in the historic neighborhood adjacent to projected Riverfront Park. And I would like to add my opinion to the projected park. And I think one thing that's really important is our neighborhood is a historic value. I mean, it's a historic neighborhood. Many of the homes, some of the oldest homes within North Bend that talk about floodplain management is crucial to those living within the floodplain of the South Fork River and North Bend. The projected park in the forested area behind our homes is an important floodplain storage, and I have seen this area nearly full of floodwater several times. I am concerned that any change in the floodplain storage would inadvertently affect its storage capacity, posing a risk not only to our neighborhood, but potentially to North Bend in general. With projections that our wet season will become wetter and that rising winter temperatures will decrease the snowpack, the flow through the South Fork will most likely increase as years go by. I'm concerned that any potential use change to this floodplain storage may cause negative effects into flood storage in general. So we must also recognize the impact to habitat that the park could cause. We must be mindful of the importance of this area to wildlife over the importance of our own enjoyment. For example, residents of our neighborhood are aware of a limp elk cow that has lived in or has been seen in our forested area behind our neighborhood for years. This elk cow is not able to keep up with the herd but has managed to live alone safely. This example reminds us that we must consider all effects and unforeseen consequences the park may have on wildlife. And a definite major concern that I have is for the safety of our children who live in our neighborhood. I'm very concerned that traffic will increase in our small neighborhood due to our close proximity to the park. The safety of our children is most important, and I am concerned that when there is increased traffic, there's increased risk to those children. I can't help but be concerned about the effect this will have on the character of our historic neighborhood. It's a quiet neighborhood with 11 homes and only one access road. If the park is created, the influx of people, perhaps there can be quite a few at times, will certainly change the tranquil nature of our neighborhood. That's in my opinion. I also want to mention that this park will not offer increased access to the river. I just want you all to take a moment to imagine that this is your historic neighborhood that you live in, your house, your family, and it's all of our habitat. So I truly love the beauty of the area around the South Fork River, and I've walked to the river along the levee for many, many years. I welcome others to take this walk and enjoy the river, but I truly feel that we should leave the forested area as it is in its natural state, as it should be.
Thank you.
Thank you for all you do, and thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to? Greg?
My name is Craig Glazier. The email in your packet is for me, so there's kind of two subjects, or two parts I want to make mention of, actually make three. First one is,
Can you
I
officially,
live at 12414 412th Avenue Southeast, which is directly behind Safeway, Little Side. I own the house and grew up in the house at 227 West Park Street, which is in the neighborhood with everybody else here. In regards to Riverfront Park, everything that you're hearing tonight is a very true statement. It is a big concern for all of us. I don't live there, but I plan to actually move back there in the future. It's not really a park. If anybody's actually walked that land, I think it should be named Riverfront Forest, because it is a forest and should stay a forest. And there isn't really any riverfront access. It's a steep drop down to the river. I've climbed it many times as a kid and even older. There's no river access. So, that's my opinion of Riverfront Park. I think there's so many other parks that have so much more, potential than Riverfront Park, of which the email that you have in your packet proposes one of them, which would be a great drop-in point for people who actually want to use the river. I know that one of the things that families want to do in North Bend is they want to use the river and enjoy the river. It's really hard to do when you don't have any true drop-in points to float the river or hang out with your kids. Where I currently reside is in the urban areas, or could be brought into the city as part of the comprehensive plan and so on down the road. I proposed it as such, and it would tie actually the railroad / William Henry Taylor Park possibly all the way to the Mountain Valley Center. Because there's kind of that last little link with possibly a pedestrian bridge across the river, and then access all the way to. And then the last park is the park that Gardner mentioned, across the river where the city has the land that they got from Nintendo. I think that would be a great opportunity. I know there's a lot of challenges with it, and it might be a little longer term plan. But it could be a great opportunity to truly create an area in which people can use the river and enjoy the river, because that's what I think everybody wants their riverfront parks to be, is to truly have riverfront access. And those need to be strategically placed along the river, depending on which way the river is turning, to create it, but then allow the river as it flows and floods and everything else to keep it that way. So, thank you.
Is there anyone online who'd like to?
I think we.
Oh,
There's more of us.
go ahead, your name and address.
My name is Jesse Thompson. I live at 231 Sydney Avenue South here in North Bend. I am neighbors with most of the cast of characters. and have lived in that home for about 18 years. My wife is not here taking care of the kids tonight, and all that. So, everything that my neighbors have said, we second, third, fourth, whatever the correct thing is there in terms of the value, the issues, and I think it always feels like an understatement when you've lived through the potentials for floods and you've seen that water come up, just how important flood storage is. I think Gardner's point about parks all over the place, like when you truly walk Riverfront Park, you realize that it is a huge flood storage ditch. There is no views, there's limited that, and then, put that in context as well as the amount of flood storage that the town has allowed to be lost over the last number of years with this growth pattern is at some point going to catch up with us and bite us all in the ass. That's my opinion, but, I think just looking at the nature of things, you can't lose this much open land and flood storage and then continue to lose it and not expect some repercussions at some point. So Riverfront Park, I heartily agree with, should be renamed forest, natural area, something else, and left undeveloped and undisturbed if at all possible. The amount of wildlife we see in our backyard, which is connected to wildlife everywhere else in the valley, is at times pretty staggering, from deer families. Half the herd of elk has literally come through our backyard from time to time. The different animal flowways that actually do transit that area, hang out there, seem to avoid the road somehow and use it for some sort of bedding issue and then turn around and go back the other way. It's pretty immense. Also in living here for 18 years and looking at the state of some of the older parks, I certainly have issues with how the town potentially would deal with adding more parks that they're not necessarily historically prepared to deal with from a financial standpoint. We see a wide variety of people using that back dike in that area for a wide variety of issues. Most of them great people walking their dogs, doing their thing, experiencing nature, families. We also find needles, drug paraphernalia. I've obviously witnessed drug deals in all of the areas underneath the bridges, underneath the trestles, continuous trash, continuous amounts of, at times, human excrement and other things that are just endemic to having an open space that's uncontrolled. I do think, just as a point of reference, Snoqualmie North Bend Police Department has done a great job since that collaboration has begun in helping that situation from what it was previous, but they're not able to be there all the time. And all the different things happening in that region are definitely pervasive. And I see the opportunity for a riverfront park, which is concealed largely below eyesight, to just further that sort of nefariousness that does happen around town at times. So, all those things combined, as well as the fact that I do have young children in the neighborhood and do see, increased traffic looking for park access, everything else. There's a lot of leftover stuff on the maps that, for whatever reason, that municipalities cannot seem to change those. Does affect our community in terms of, there's even times when people look to drive through his garage because they, Siri's telling them that the street still goes through there. There's a house there, and in that case, it would drive through his house. So, absolutely would love to see that park renamed, and am supportive of, looking to develop the other side of the river. There's no interruption with homes, there's no residential interruption, there never, at this point, it looks like will be. It is, a part of the dike that probably could be altered without, certain flood implications that homes and businesses on this side would experience. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, your name and address.
My name is Christopher Newell, I live at 249 Bendigo Boulevard. I pretty much agree, I'm not gonna go down that. Appreciate all the work you guys do. So obviously the floodplain issue, I try to take my bias out of it, because I live in the neighborhood. But I live in North Bend, live by Mount Meadows. My wife is from North Bend, she was born and raised here. And you can take my bias out of living in the neighborhood. Obviously I'm concerned about the flood storage, everything else. But that's what makes North Bend great, is the fact that we have that natural element. I don't want to see that develop, like as my neighbor Jesse spoke, we have elk there in the morning, we have ducks, we have everything. I don't want a developed park. I don't want my kids to go to a developed park. I want them to walk through the forest. And living there, we talk about community needs. That's what community needs. I don't need a park. I need some woods. I need some nature to go to. I need it for my kids to go to. And then it's also historic. We have the train trestle there, has graffiti painted all over it. If we want to spend our money, get rid of the graffiti. All of us pick up that park. The city doesn't maintain that park. We maintain that park. I walk it every morning. I pick up trash, bags of clothes. I'm a security specialist. I pick up the little tinfoil things that people are smoking methanol or fentanyl on. They make designs on it. We pick that up every morning. What happens if my kids crawl through that? Now you want to bring more people into the neighborhood. Currently, on the other side of the dike, there's a homeless camp, or I think, have you guys seen that? There's 3, 4 people right now. Stolen bikes are there. I guarantee you they're not stolen. There's furniture stolen from homes in that. There's a tent, there's a thing, and they're having fires there. So now we're going to bring forest fires there when the summer starts. So we don't regulate it. We don't have security for it. It puts our community in danger. Drugs. I've actually seen 2 bums get in fights and pull knives, nothing happened, but that kind of stuff's going on there. So if we do go forward with this, what is the life safety plan? What is the security plan for the neighborhood? And then obviously flood, we talked about flood, everything else, no one's really talked about security, but just leave it alone. Let the community have the one untouched piece of property, and let alone the flood storage and everything else. That's my opinion, but talk about community needs. I'm from here. I don't want to see developed parks. I understand that you guys need money for grants. Great, get that money for grants. Fix the trestle, do it somewhere else. But keep nature natural in nature. That's just my opinion. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, anybody online?
If you'd like to speak online, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Oh, I don't see anybody. All right. Well, thank you. Let's close the, public comment at 7:02. Next, we'll have the commissioners go ahead and ask questions of the city. Commissioners have any thoughts, and we can just discuss what we've heard, discuss what we've read, and maybe have some questions for the city maybe to cut back to us on. So, anybody would like to go?
If you'd like, I can also provide a brief response to.
Sure. Let's start with that.
Okay. So we heard you very loud and clear, and we very, very much appreciate your concerns. Those are our concerns as well. We want to make sure that we're not creating hazards, that we're not planning things that create flooding concerns, safety concerns, or whatever. Just to give a little bit of the broader context to why we're working on those parks, or Riverfront Park in particular, the survey that we did back in the summer identified, what are your primary interests? What are the things that you desire most? And we listed out all sorts of different things, active sports facilities, passive sports facilities, trails, all, different types of facilities we don't have in North Bend right now. And the very top priority that the public said was they want to have river access. And so that's one of the primary reasons to look at where can we provide additional access to the river. Our council has been interested in this for a number of years. And as we've moved through our parks capital improvement plan, we've been able to check off a lot of projects on that. But we haven't provided riverfront access improvements in the 14 years that I've been here. And so the council said that's a priority. We need to do something about that. And so the city has hired Site Workshop, which is a urban design and landscape architecture firm, to come up with a plan for both Riverfront Park and then as well for William H. Taylor Park, where the depot is. So that planning process is to get public feedback and make a plan consistent with that public feedback to improve river access in a way that's appropriate. That planning process will continue, and we're going to be setting up a meeting directly with residents adjacent to Riverfront Park in the near future. So we want to hear more from you. We want to work with you. One of the primary drivers of that process that we've provided the site workshop is that this area needs to remain forested. The character of this park needs to be a natural forested area. So there may be some improvements, but it's not gonna be an urban park. It's not gonna be clear the trees and put up ball fields and restrooms and all sorts of things like that. There was a question about, why aren't we providing stuff on the opposite side, on the left bank? That is a plan. So we actually have it in our Parks Capital Facilities Plan, to specifically develop river access on the left bank. We can't do that at this point because we're also doing a levee setback on the left side. And the engineering for that levee setback has to precede what we can do with that area. It's also a little bit more complicated on the left side because we have Ribery Creek right there. So there's a lot of wetlands and critical area issues that we have to work through. But we do want to provide that access, and we want to provide some public access and park improvements on that side. It's just a little bit later in the process. I think I've touched on the primary issues.
I have a question. Are you saying that improvements to Riverfront Park as it exists are gonna happen regardless?
There will likely be something that happens there, because of the public process and the desire of council to improve, access along the river.
But that could include cleanup of the ivy, that it could include, a natural stump bench just to give people a place to break. It doesn't have to be what you think of as development. It could be cleanup or better doing the pathway or at least a signage of the history, you know, not necessarily a developed park. But it's going to go through the process and recommendation, and council will make that final decision. It's not impossible that the council could say, okay, let's leave it in, you know, the way it is, but it still has to go through the process. So no one's saying yes for sure because the master plan or the site plan hasn't been approved. But it is a process that we were directed by council to go through, and so that's what we're doing.
And I would encourage everyone here to go on that piece of property and walk it before you spend a dime extra thinking that this is going to improve any sort of public access to the riverway. There is a gravel dike separating you from the river at any point in that park, and homes along each side in a heavily terrained small area, but heavily terrained small area. So anybody who honestly believes that that somehow improves access to the river, I would encourage you to go really study that property for yourself before the town spends any additional funds.
So one thing that I thought was very valuable that the staff put together in this new comprehensive plan was, I love the red line, so I really appreciate you doing the red line so I could see what the plan was and what it's going to be now. And so it actually addresses Riverfront Park, where it used to be more of like a promenade and a boardwalk, but now it doesn't say that at all. Now it says, you know, improve public access, maybe, you know, I mean, I'm not quoting, but, you know, have some downtown, but maintaining a predominantly forested character and floodplain storage capacity. So that's very valuable coming from the comprehensive plan, because while that's not a set plan, that's the direction that the city is trying to go with this. Looking at the improvement districts also in this plan, it does note 2027. So this is not going to be something that is on the docket this year or next year. This is down the road in 2027 to be determined. So I don't think that the city is going to roll out a bunch of financing for this at this time. This is a comprehensive plan. So in the future, you know, we do want to help mitigate some of the impacts of some of the drug use and some of the, you know, less favorable things for the quality of residents and for the quality of their community. So I think that that's really the intent on this, is to have a positive park, but it's not necessarily going to be a groomed park. And it's great that the city's planning to reach out to through those plans. One question I do have for staff is, it also notes that, I lost my spot, but it's listed as a passive park. So do you have a definition of what a passive park is?
Yeah, passive is generally walking, hiking, bird watching, or generally natural areas, as opposed to active parks being with specific park facilities, so play equipment and sports facilities and so forth.
So that's valuable as well to back that this is not going to be and by definition, Riverfront Park is passive and a wildlife corridor. So it's helpful.
We can, up to Susan, whether we take more, but really, we had the public hearing, it's not supposed to be a back and forth between the audience. But Susan, would you like to take another?
We'll take one more question, and then we're gonna keep it with us, because we need an opportunity to discuss.
I have not a question, but a statement. I would love you folks to take a walk on that dike over there, on this right levee, and walk the whole thing between Bendigo Boulevard and North Bend Boulevard. Take a look. What you will find is a dike, a levee, built by FEMA to keep flooding out. You can't touch that. There are easements across there for various other companies. You can't dig in it. You can't do anything with it, really. You can't make it handicap accessible because it's gotta be gravel top so it can be maintained. County comes out all the time. I have multiple easements with the county on a regular basis so they can maintain it.
Okay, thank you.
And the other point is, as you walk around the corner and make the actual North Bend, you will notice a sand beach. That's private property. It is not the city's property. You can't.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners have any more?
I'd like an administrative question from just for the comp plan. I actually participated in one of those parks meetings with you, or the workshops, which were great. I might have asked this question then. The population projection, the census information, is that a requirement in terms of a measurement to use for the city to stay in compliance? Or I guess, to say another way, could North Bend in the future, when putting these plans together, find another measure to determine how to outlay capital over time? I guess, for example, if you look at the population trend, but think there's 70% of that population is under the age of 18 or something, and that could determine or skew a little bit more of how you want to spend those dollars, versus if we're closer to like a 50% or lower, and then you look at parks or ball fields or trail, or how that, is it mandated by the state in terms of that's like the measure that we use, or?
Yeah, so the population projection itself is not a mandate. What is a mandate is the growth targets based on the state's population projections.
Okay.
The state says that in 20 years, we expect to be this big. And then what happens is the Puget Sound Regional Council in this area then takes that estimate and it says, okay, we know that the Puget Sound area is going to grow by this much.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want everybody putting up a wall and saying, we're not taking that growth. So every jurisdiction gets a share of that growth. And we then have to accommodate the land use, make sure that we have zoning that supports the number of houses to meet that population target.
Okay.
So within that, then, we in our parks element, what we did is we took that growth target and we said, we expect in North Bend, based on our historic trends, to have a certain number of people per household. And then that number of people per household times that residential growth target equals our population projection. And that's then what we use in our level of service standards to determine the number of facilities that we need. The level of service standards are up to us, and that's where we have considered kind of historic greater amounts of participation by youth in a number of sports facilities. So our level of service standards, for example, for baseball fields, soccer fields, et cetera, are generally higher than what they are in a number of other communities.
Got it, okay.
Reflecting that.
Okay, perfect.
And if I can add to that, there are other tools that the city can access, for example, from some of the studies that Skyview Metro Parks have done for projection growth, specifically age-driven and the aging population. So there are other tools that have done for this general area that go outside the city's footprint that can also be taken into consideration when figuring out what are the level standards that apply in
Got
our
it.
community and where we're likely headed in the next 10
Like in school enrollment or participation in the Ivy stuff? Okay, cool.
Exactly, yeah, so there are some other tools, none of them are probably perfect
Sure.
on their own, but as you use more.
No, but that's good to know that there are other considerations. Okay, perfect.
I mean, really, it came from the tribe, that email that was, well, letter that we all received. And this is something that I'm just asking. I like the survey saying that we need more dog areas, but it did bring, that letter brought up a good point where, do dogs influence the wildlife if they're on trails, and do we need more dog-free areas? And I don't know the answer to it, but somehow that should be something that we should look into. And then do we need to identify any of the, I'm probably gonna pronounce this wrong, but the riparian preservation? We need to say, okay, these areas really need to be preserved, and we shouldn't touch them.
So riparian areas in particular are often critical areas. They're designated for protection under our, so those are like rivers, wetlands, streams. Those have specific buffers that are generally no-touch areas. In certain circumstances along the rivers, you can go into those for public access. But generally, they are no-touch, leave it undisturbed, let the trees remain buffers. And so those are not for development and not for public access.
Okay. And with the tribe, I mean, through government, you have certain entities that you work with on the general plan, which are outlined. It doesn't seem, and I'm not familiar, it doesn't seem like the tribe is listed as one of those that we have to consult with. But I do like the idea of including them because they are part of our heritage and part of our history.
Yeah, we want to consult with the tribe. The tribe is another government, so just like we would consult with different, Department of Ecology or King County or something, we want to consult with the tribe and get their input.
Okay. And then with that, I mean, it just seemed like from the letter, it seemed like they just felt very underrepresented. And so, I guess I don't think anybody is here from them, but I would love to know what input they would like to have in the process. And honestly, I mean, in my own ignorance of the history of the area, I mean, I would love to see, signage on the places that are considered very special places, to say, okay, when I go visit that place, then I can know some of the history here. I think it would be valuable for anybody in the community to know more about each of the parks or each of the places that we visit.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, we want to consult with the tribe, we want to have a relationship with them, and their input and their stories are really important as they are, the original residents here. So I want to that's one of the reasons that I'm not looking for any recommendations tonight from the commission, but I want to more carefully review that letter and consider, are there amendments that are appropriate based on some of their comments.
Okay. And is there signage within this portion of the comprehensive plan that could address any of the, having a marker with any of their history denoted in the parks, or is that a totally separate section?
So that gets more into specific design, but we do have a policy in our parks element that talks specifically about historic interpretation and seeking tribal involvement in that.
Okay. I did notice that paragraph, so, okay. Thank you.
More thought?
Anything else you guys saw or want to comment on, so that we're take back, make amendments?
I have a question. Page 27, when we look at the chart, the level of service standards basically it goes through.
Are you on 27 of the red line or 27 of the clean?
Clean. Oh, thank you. Table 4. Thank you. I just want to make sure that I'm reading this correctly, and I want to just go to the end, to our goal, future 2044. 14,701, is that our projected population? I thought I saw 15,155 on page 4.
on population is currently, plus the projected increase based on that growth assumption, our target, plus areas of UGA that will become annexed to the city.
Oh, okay, so the equation, so where does 15,155 come from?
Where is that at?
It's
Right here.
Page 15, yeah.
Great question.
Page 15.
Oh,
and
thank you.
1, and there's just in the paragraph above.
So it's page
So-
15, and what was the other page referenced?
20,
And 27.
Yeah, I
Okay.
need to
I'm just
look at
making
that.
notes for,
yeah, that's it.
That might just be an error of when I had updated one thing and didn't carry it forward. I will take a careful look at that.
That would also carry over the year 2029. Looks like those numbers are slightly off.
Which one is the right one, the 15 or 14?
I don't know off the top of my head, so I will
I
look into
believe
it.
In the middle.
11, but I don't know what.
Yeah.
Thanks for catching that.
Oh, yeah.
There's so many numbers.
I know. And if we just kind of keep going down this column for 2044, are we, okay, so baseball field. So we're saying 1 per 1,000 people, and then we're ending at 6. But my math said 15. Am I doing math wrong? Or are we just
So-
deciding that we just don't need 15, which I would probably agree with? And I just want to know, even though I do agree with that decision, I just want to know how we came to that decision and how we decided 6 was the number.
So, one clarification,
Yeah.
is you don't, the way this standard works is you don't trigger the facility until you've passed the threshold. It's not rounding up.
Okay.
And,
The 6 from where we're at today, from the population today.
yeah, so you take the current supply plus the anticipated need based on that population figure, and that'll tell you how many more you need. So I can do the math again, and make sure it's correct.
Okay. I mean, okay. I just,
Then in 2029, we would need a 9th field, and then by 2044, we would need 6 additional fields, bringing the total up.
okay.
If the population got there.
If, yeah,
If the population.
yeah.
And on that topic, and I think this is also something we discussed in that workshop briefly, was, is there a way to discuss all-purpose multi-sport fields that encompass some of this, right? Like you have soccer, baseball, lacrosse, maybe like similar what they did at Sirius, right? Like it's multi-sport, and
Yeah.
could that have smaller impact, maybe higher utility to the town?
These are not exclusive, so you could have a baseball field and a soccer field overlapping, and the standard for each of those.
Gotcha, okay.
But we would still end up with 15, potentially, if we made our goal.
Yeah, so your conversation is, do you think 1 per 1,000 is appropriate?
But we'll reevaluate it in 10 years. Remember, the comp plan is every 10 years, but the vision is more than 10 years out.
So, okay, so we currently have 8. Okay, so in 10 years, we would have maybe 9, then, you're saying? Right, what is it,
Yeah.
2023 or 2033? So we'd be past 2029, but not quite at 2040. So we would have just one more, and then we could talk about it again. Okay, I could live with 9, 15 is a little.
The Little League board meeting after this, I'll tell you how much we're growing by. We might need to.
Oh, God. Okay, so then,
So this is something that, just to give clarification on, the Parks Commission really considered these levels of service standards based on the comment that we received from the survey. So the survey had asked specifically for each of our facilities, baseball fields, soccer fields, et cetera,
right,
do you feel like we have enough?
right.
And in a lot of cases, the public's response was, yeah, we really feel like we have enough. So that, then if the level of service standard said, we don't really need anything at this point, and the public was saying, no, we don't really feel like we need more, then we left the level of service standard alone. Whereas if they said, we really need this, and our level of service standard didn't call for it yet, that's an indication to up that standard. So we did that, for example, with pickleball courts.
I feel like you did that survey during like a pickleball court.
Pickleball season.
I can tell you, it's an everyday thing, the pickleball. And coming from the park.
Need some
world.
indoor pickleball courts, apparently, covered pickleball.
Yeah, they have it at the Civic Center now. Indoor pickleball.
And also to add to Mike's comment, our intent was to, which I don't think we've quite perfected it yet, but to show more multi-use and potential. So pickleball is not just pickleball, it can also be tennis, it can be, like at EJ Roberts is serving also as volleyball, so multi-use, a court size that can serve multiple needs. So when the next big new sport comes out, we'll be prepared, whatever comes after pickleball.
This is similar to the one that you have on this Mount Si Park, right?
Yeah, so we've restriped the tennis, the basketball court, we also have double
Pickleball,
yeah.
yeah, okay.
Yes.
So I appreciate that we made this chart in accordance to our survey that went out, but I feel like our survey that went out also put ball fields and sports like this at the very bottom. What people were saying that they wanted was they wanted fields where they could relax and enjoy nature. They were saying that they wanted trails. They were saying they wanted river access. It was very limited, I thought, from the numbers I saw, of people that said that they wanted any of this. So I guess my question really is, like you said, Mike, if we felt like we had enough, we just left it alone, would we ever consider maybe bringing it down and having less? Or is that a conversation we would have in 10 years? Because the numbers look fine until 10 years, and then it just kind of blows up a lot.
I think that's a portion that, if I may, I think that's a portion of the population and what the population is projected to become. This was, you're bringing a lot more youth into this as that population grows.
So if we feel we have
That was kind of,
our current population, and we feel we have enough baseball fields, for example, we don't want to reduce that level of service. So we want to keep pace with growth at the current level of service if we feel we have enough. I don't think anyone's saying here or anywhere, including Little League, that we have too many. So we don't want to reduce the level of service. We want to keep the level of service what it is today and make sure we pace it with growth. And if we find out we're falling behind, then you change the level of service.
But then also, when you're developing your capital improvement plan, that's where some of that other information about what we really want river access, we really want trails, that can then go into what projects you're planning and more in the immediate.
Yes.
So.
Okay, that makes sense.
You know, maybe tennis will go away and it'll only be pickleball in the future. The level of service for tennis courts could go down.
I have a question on that similar thought. For a long-term comprehensive plan, is the city responsible for considering any zoning for additional schools or any development like that?
Zoning specifically for schools?
Or any empty lot that's currently zoned for something, but based on the population trend or the growth, right? If we're gonna get to 14,000 between now and then, are we gonna need another school to some degree?
Ultimately, the school district plans for its facilities.
Yeah.
We work with the
But
school
do we,
district.
yeah,
We work with the school district, but we don't zone anything because they need to purchase it before we'll zone the school.
okay.
So we don't just take a single-family zoned property and say, nope, sorry, that's a school now.
I
So,
believe schools are allowed in any zone.
yes,
So it leaves it very open.
Got it.
the permitted use in any zone. So we work with the school, we talk about how many we're gonna need at full build-out and stuff, but where they go, that's fully up to the school district and their planning, capital plans.
So we have to buy it first, and then we can talk about it.
Well, once they buy it, then we can rezone it from it's permitted in any zone, so they can move forward with that, without rezoning, but usually we clean up our zoning afterwards to public facilities, just so that it's clear on our map that that can't be residential anymore, because it's a school.
Yeah.
I have a couple of considerations to the clean copy, very minor admin ones. So on page 18, under city parks, where it talks about Forestry Park, I would consider adding a sentence that's on page 17 for Tollgate Pond Park, clarifying that the maintenance is the responsibility of Sayou Metro Parks for an interlocal agreement with the city of North Bend, because that just shows that the city won't carry the burden of the maintaining of the facilities.
And are these the ones that you emailed me?
Yeah, those are the ones that I emailed your copies on. And then a very minor, just a spelling on item C10, which is for the Sirius, so that the website link does not as is. Okay, it needs to be changed to an I. And then finally, a question is on the capital facilities plan where we talk about Tollgate Farm Phase 2 and the athletic field. As those fields have been developed or renovated to the natural grass fields that can accommodate cricket and soccer, it became very clear in the process that the water table is very high, and the development of baseball complex is really not feasible at that site, and we still refer to as part of the future plan. So I don't know if we can.
Which one, sorry?
Sorry, it's the Tollgate Farm Phase 2.
Okay.
Which page is
Yeah,
that?
that is on, let me pull it up. We can modify the language, but follow through. It's 35, yeah, the third item, Tollgate Farm Phase 2 improvements that specifically I'm concerned about the athletic field, the landscaping, and yes, there's a parking plan for additional parking.
Okay, so you're wanting to take the athletic field out of it because we tried and it.
We have, yeah, so the improvements have already been made, they've been renovated, they're natural grass, but the water table is very high, so the likelihood of getting synthetic fields, backstops into that facility would be very, very costly. There are some critical areas, there's also some cultural sensitive areas on that part, which is essentially greatly costly.
So are you suggesting removing the baseball reference?
Yes.
But the Phase 2 improvements, like for more parking and so forth, could remain?
Yeah, so, but yeah, we're still following the Tollgate master plan. The fields are already there, they just don't have the backstop, would include. I would remove the second sentence, the work would include necessary backstop fences, ground preparation, seeding, irrigation at that site, drainage and bleachers, or at least consider that.
Is there general consensus on that?
How does that affect the estimate, the last sentence?
Estimate of what?
The $1.5 million?
Yeah,
Take out-
yeah, we would reduce that.
And is there a master plan for this that I can read, like, the details of what the rest of this is? Because it has to be more than just apple trees, right?
Yeah, we have a specific Tollgate Farm master plan. It's kind of old, it's from 2004,
Yeah.
but it's still been the guiding plan for how we're developing Tollgate Farm.
But most of that work has been completed, which is.
I'm gonna run into a tower so that I don't lose the recording.
Okay.
Something about more parking, or we doing more parking for the,
Yeah, so right now, when you come into Tollgate Farm Park, there's just kind of one strip of parking. The intent is to create a full triangle. The original plan showed wings coming in down different directions further to the west as well. And that's really necessary for some of the larger events, like some cricket matches and so forth.
People are parking anyway.
Yeah, people, the parking lot has it.
That's unimproved as of now.
okay. So, when you said take out athletic fields, which type of athletic fields were you okay with, or would still work here? Cricket fields?
Soccer, cricket, and
Those have already been developed and they're in use.
Okay, so.
Yeah, with that work, that part of the work has been completed.
Awesome.
I want to note also, Councilmember Mark Jocelyn had some suggested edits to our park settlement maps. There were just some small revisions to reflect current zoning. We've rezoned some of the properties, 5 use just across Park Street, and we wanted to make sure to reflect those consistent with the zoning as public properties and parks and open space. So I'll make those edits for your next round.
Great. I have some questions about financing, like, how does that work? Like,
How do we fund our parks?
yeah.
Yeah, so there's a number of mechanisms. The biggest one is park impact fee revenue. So as development occurs, residential development, there's a park impact fee that's applied for every residential unit. And there's a fee for a single-family home, a fee for a multifamily condo, and multifamily apartment. And that's based on the proportional impact that one unit has on our level of service standards. So, we've had a study done by actual architect consultants to determine what that proportional impact is. And then the idea is growth is paying for growth. So we want to maintain those levels of service standards. And to do that, as growth occurs, there has to be an amount of cost proportional to its impact to pay for the city to construct improvements to maintain those levels of service standards. So that's our biggest pot of revenue. We receive, I don't remember what it is, like 6,000 from a single family home and 3,000 or 4,000 from multi-family structure. And that goes into a pot, and we can only use that pot of money on projects that are on our Parks Capital Facilities Plan. So that's number one, and we typically match that with grants. So there's a lot of grants that are available from the state, grants that are available from King County, and then some from the fed as well. Again, eligibility for those grants is dependent on having our parks element certified by the State Recreation Conservation Office. So that's why this update is really important. There's also, King County has their parks levy that voters approved, I think in 2018 for 6 years or 8 years, something like that. And the city of North Bend gets a share of that levy. So we get about $100,000 each year from that levy to apply towards park and trail projects.
Can you say that again? What levy?
It's the King County Parks levy,
Okay, and who puts money into that?
King County voters.
Okay.
So everybody that lives in King County.
So our sales tax?
No, it was a specific levy.
Levy?
Property
So
tax
what's
levy.
it attached to, property taxes?
Yeah, property tax levy.
Okay. What about, I mean, it's not just homeowners that are, using these parks. Are we having any way of getting funds from all the people that come to our town to use our parks? Is there any?
The more tourism you have, the more sales tax you have, the more money the city has generally, but.
Have we done anything with sales tax to also help with our parks and our beautification of our town?
Well, in our general fund, if they do projects, it's not always, can only be funded by impacts and grants. The council could, when doing the budget, put funds to to parks as well.
So.
They do they give I think the parks budget, the small one that the commission gets every year is not from a grant or anything, that's from the general fund. So they could up that in a year if there was something, or assign a specific park.
And then maintenance costs do not
maintenance.
come from impact fees, so maintenance comes out of the general fund.
Yes. And so, when we put this plan together, are we trying to reach for the moon, or are we trying to be conservative?
So you don't wanna make our housing cost prohibitive, we need to think about affordable housing, so we wanna make it realistic.
Yeah, that's my concern, is making the housing cost so high by having large impact fees, which affects people being able to live in apartments, et cetera, and so how does that get balanced?
So that is something that we considered, and we actually did lower our park level of service standard for soccer fields. We removed the level of service standard for golf, because that's really not something that a municipality is involved in providing these days. One other one we lowered slightly. And that was one of the considerations, is if you don't need it, you don't need to fund it, paying for it, so.
Don't put it on there so that we can keep our costs reasonable.
I think that's a great idea. How are we tracking? Do we have a tool that tracks, hey, we've decreased this impact fee, or we've taken this away, like in hopes that now this whole building will cost less, in hopes that now it'll be cheaper to live here? Do we have anything that tracks that?
Yeah, so our council has directed reports periodically to compare our impact fees against the impact fees of surrounding jurisdictions, so.
You're still dealing with markets.
Yeah.
So it's hard, yes, cost of housing is gonna be lower if the house is gonna be lower, if the cost of housing is gonna be lower. But there's still the market factor that you gotta build into it.
Which is such a wild card.
It's such a wild card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you definitely can't encourage affordable housing and deed-restricted housing if the costs are too high as well.
Yeah.
But we don't apply impact fees to actual.
Correct, yes, I remember that.
That's a fascinating conversation. I'm curious, is there a study out there that proves that if you lower utility rate connection fee, that the housing costs are less in a region? That's what I was thinking, yeah.
And hard to say.
Yeah, I know.
I'm sure the Master Builders has put the study out there and could provide you a whole lot of data.
Yeah.
There is a think tank that has done a lot of studies across the United States, and what they've done is, they do studies where they take two towns that are very much alike, and in one town, they put all this criteria on where the government puts all these fees and does, like, all these requirements, and then over here, they have free market. And after about 5 to 10 years, they figure out which one is doing better, and the free market is always doing better. The one that had all the criteria, though, the builders couldn't build, and they were held back. And so there are things out there, there's studies, and part of our housing problem that's happening started back in the 20s. In the 20s, we were doing great. We had all kinds of different housing. In the 40s, when they came back from World War II, all they do is single family. So we, for all these years since the 40s, we just do single family. So we don't have enough multifamily. We don't have enough housing, and so there you have your supply and demand problem. So, yeah, and it's a big problem.
And part of the cost of housing that turns into the cost of the house is the cost of the property, which is where a lot of the market comes into, and why it's not just the lumber and our fees and everything else, and
nexus to the
label.
UDA and having to force the areas into access where.
Correct.
So, I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to it. I was just focusing on that one piece.
Yeah, but the Master Builders does have a handbook out there that talks about things we can do to reduce costs by saving builders money. But there's always the argument, well, you save the money, they're still gonna sell it for high and pocket that money. But I can guarantee you, they're never gonna take the hit. They're never gonna build the house that costs $100,000 to build and sell it for $90,000, never.
Well, that's what your argument is, because if you tack on the fees, it gets passed through to the buyer. Any savings never gets passed through to the buyer.
Correct.
That's
all the costs get passed through. The savings you generally won't.
Yeah.
Well, this study season that you were just talking about, I'm wondering if the town that was like more free and didn't have as many fees, you said it was cheaper to live there. I'm wondering if they just had more inventory. And
They tried to make the studies be very similar to towns. I can tell you the website. It's fascinating. They do a lot of them. They do multiple cities across the United States, so.
Yeah, let me know.
Like AEI.org or something like that. Yeah, it's fascinating. But there are a lot of moving parts, so, and it's not gonna be solved in the short term, because we let this happen since the 40s.
It's a statewide housing, countrywide, but we're worried about our state, housing crisis.
Does anybody else have anything else to add regarding parks?
No.
Okay.
I was very curious, how we're engaging with the police department. I've heard a lot of comments about safety from the public. I've been in several parks in the city, and I've also seen needles and trash and all the other stuff that's there. So as we look at increasing river access and we get more parks amenities, when we are talking about estimates for all these costs, are we talking to the police department about having more frequent surveillance and having assistance with making sure that these parks are safe? Is that anywhere in the comprehensive plan, or is that a thing that could?
Police services are in the capital facility zone of the comp plan.
Okay.
And there are levels of service standards for police service, which are, I think, based on call times.
Okay.
But I think a lot of it just comes back to communication. So if there's a problem area within a park,
you got a call.
Just let them know, and it'll increase the.
I think now it's come back to staff too. I don't know if there is enough police to we can write it down in the years to come, but if there's no one to come.
No, definitely.
But I definitely think that we should be thinking about that, addressing it as we get bigger and as we make these places beautiful and fun to hang out in.
Absolutely. And
Well, I
then-
think that, go ahead.
I was, along the lines of safety, I did see some safety signage, included in many of the parks, but also just like river access, you know, rivers, every summer, there's lots of deaths in rivers across the country. I think it's just, any planning for increased river access, frontage, walkability, we really should be considering, like, what is that safety, plan for kids, for animals, for anyone who's walking the trails. So just continue to be forceful with the safety comments. But, yeah, sorry.
No, the only thing I was gonna add to what you're comment about growing, I think it's not only within the comp plan, but it's a bigger conversation for council to have about level of service with SNOPO. Do they wanna maintain doing this, some shared contract with Snoqualmie? Do they wanna up their level of service? Does that mean something happens with a different arrangement, or does SNOPO come to North Bend and contract with Snoqualmie? Like how that, I think that's a much bigger conversation that has to happen based on the population growth and where things are going anyway, aside from just the parks.
So safety is always a conversation on the Parks Board. So whether it's near a river, near a street, you know, whatever it is, it's always on the radar.
Yeah.
We've had those dialogues. So crosswalks, if we're gonna be connecting trails, signage, those types of things.
I'm sorry, I just realized, what's your name?
I'm Mark Carrera, one of the Parks Commissioners. Sorry.
Fabulous.
I'm also the fire chief for the city of Snoqualmie, so
Oh, cool.
that's why safety's always on my list.
Yeah.
So one more question. So the city maintains these parks, that comes out of our general fund, you said. We clean them up, we keep them nice, and that's written somewhere in this, right?
So,
I
yeah,
don't remember seeing that.
It's not specifically laid out. What it does describe is we have an local agreement with Sideview Park District, and Sideview maintains a number of our parks.
Okay.
So they maintain Tollgate Park, they maintain Tollgate Farm Park, and they will be maintaining Tennant Trailhead Park.
Okay.
So that's a relationship of service there.
We also have an Adopt a Park program to help, you know.
Okay. Do you know how much money we spend every year on, like, how much money we spent last year on cleanup and just maintenance of our parks, total maybe?
The big first budget.
Yeah.
It's happening, and,
It's a lot.
yeah.
I mean, you'd have to look at, I mean, obviously, what Skyview does, they also collect funds from the uses and rentals. There's an offset
Yeah.
there. Obviously, where we don't do rentals, it comes, you know, the city has to pay for the maintenance.
And we feel like we have the staff and to keep doing this, and as we're growing,
Staffing goes budget by budget year to council by the department head requesting the need.
You guys added a park
Yeah.
staff.
Yes, we did.
Shared with,
Yeah.
I think, streets or something like that.
Yeah.
Generally, I think the city's done a good job working with Sideview for the
No, but-
active
Inside?
recreation, so say sports fields.
That's generally
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Skyview.
That Sideview
Tenant
maintains
trail.
that space.
Oh, no, this one here.
Dedicated to it. Passive or active parks that just have a playground. That's something that's been a good fit for and maintain on a basis. We're balancing based on the use size of the park.
Yeah, trying to look at what's it more of a neighborhood park that either an HOA or the city maintains versus what's more regional that meets all of Skyview's area too, and that they would maintain that. So we look at kind of different scales and uses.
And we feel like it's been working. So what I don't like is when we write this like beautiful thing, but then in reality, it just doesn't work, like with staffing and with budgets and everything. So I just, like your opinion, it has been working. We have.
I mean, there's always bumps and starts,
Right.
but, that's something that council is responsive to when the public says this is really not, you know, getting messy. They'll up the staffing level.
Okay.
I think that's kind of what's nice about having a comprehensive plan, is that you can kind of say, this is what we would like our community to look like. And then hopefully we have the staffing and all of the things that go along with it, but it doesn't have to be like, okay,
Exactly,
this isn't
yeah.
code, you know, this is what we're
The vision.
hoping to accomplish, but this isn't like the end all, you know? So I think it's kind of a nice thing that government has to say, okay, this is what we want to grow into, if possible.
Well, and it dictates the future need too, if you're, in terms of the service session that goes on for parks, that informs the hiring of more park staff when that comes in.
Or just contracting with Sideview.
But it is, I mean, I know it's a lot of detailed information, there's a lot of facts and figures, and there's a lot of those big dream goals in there too. But one of the things that I've learned over the years in writing grants on the Sideview side is that if a park is not identified on a plan somewhere, a trail connection that you're hoping to make someday, if it does not exist on anyone's plan, your chance of getting grant funding is zero. So even if it's a dream and it may not become a reality tomorrow or even 10 years down the road, if we don't identify it as one of those dotted potential trails that would have a community benefit, there's really no chance of getting it off the ground. And given that the process happens so rarely, we go 5 or sometimes 10 years before the next update comes. So it is really to our community's benefit to try to think and forecast as far ahead as possible.
But to our credit, we have checked off a huge number of those projects in our, since 2015, so.
I really appreciate you saying that. Me personally, I have a hard time living in that gray area. I'm very like, what's the problem, the solution, let's go.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate you saying that.
Very well done.
Yeah.
Any more comments?
So, a logistical question, this is gonna come back to both commissions.
Okay.
We need to make some edits. Would you guys like to meet together again? Or we can split back off and get a separate Parks Commission recommendation, and Planning Commission recommendation?
That's more of a question of scheduling, right? When's your guys' meeting normally?
So they're normally the second, or the fourth,
Fourth Wednesday.
you guys are first and third. So the next Planning Commission meeting would be March 1st. So I don't know if that's something that,
We've got a lot on March 1st, though.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
We've got the big
I think
open
it's
house.
good that we got together again, because they know information that we don't know.
Yeah, but I'm also nervous about if you guys start making recommendations that they haven't seen, and likewise,
Yeah.
then you got.
We'll lead to another meeting anyway.
Yeah.
Well, what are some of the future meetings looking like?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna open right here.
Be 1st and 15th for us, right?
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I mean, we could, we're doing our big housing action plan, so I don't know if you want to combine the parks element with the housing action plan. It is the only item on the agenda, but it is both an open house and a public hearing. So we have the open house starting at 5:30, and then going into our meeting,
Yeah.
6:30 with a public hearing.
Open for at least the 1st, but what about just the 15th?
And then the 15th, we were hoping to have the housing action plan recommendation. So it wouldn't be the public hearing anymore, so we could do that. We also need to appoint a chair, and that's the only other thing.
There is not a rush on this, though, so we have today,
We have-
2024.
Yes.
So we can wait a month and come back when.
We have nothing on the April 5th scheduled right now.
And, just because of some of the questions that were asked here, like about safety and snowpo and stuff like that, is there a way, like, maybe that if we had questions we could pose to maybe get some of that feedback, whether it's from snowpo or somebody?
We did take some notes,
Okay.
and so what we'll usually do is respond at the next meeting,
Okay.
or if you have additional questions, you can always email us. The police is, I didn't necessarily write it down, because it is, we work with them all the time on
Yeah.
services, but the other concerns, questions, and notes, you know, that we know we need to come back and change, the red line will show those, or
Okay.
we can address them in the report.
I'm sorry about the formatting issue where it went to wide version. Trying to figure that out, because when I add the maps are that format.
Oh, yeah.
And it makes the whole document that format, so I just need to figure that out.
Oh, I can help with that.
Okay.
I know how to do that.
Would it be too much to ask the planning commission to meet on the 1st, the 15th, and the 29th, which is your meeting, right?
We could, yes, if the planning commission wants to add an extra meeting and meet on the parks commission agenda, we can do that too. We would advertise it the same way.
Yeah.
So if that works for you guys to meet at the,
15 and on 29?
We normally don't have a meeting on the 29th.
Oh, we don't have it?
It's their meeting.
Oh,
We would
okay.
just be
yeah,
joining
your
them.
meeting on the park.
Okay, so.
No, not yet,
Agenda.
so that's a possibility.
Third meet, okay.
March twenty-second would be the full.
Then
Oh, right.
Am I wrong?
So
It would be the-
what's your February parks?
The
Oh,
20
February would be the,
Is that too soon?
so that'd be
February
next,
22nd.
next.
So that'd be too soon, because
Yeah.
we would have you do, so
Yeah.
we'd be looking at the parks in March, which you're saying is which one, March what?
March 22nd.
So we could do March 22nd, if you guys are good with that, having a third
I was thinking,
Yeah.
commission meeting.
Bump your you guys are meeting on the 21st?
15th.
15th.
We'd meet the week before,
So planning commissioners, how do you feel about meeting on,
22nd.
March 22nd.
Yeah,
I can do it.
yeah,
March
22nd, Wednesday. So
It'll
we
be
have a meeting on March 1st, March 15th, and then
Correct.
just
the 22nd.
together.
Do this again together, correct?
Work for me, yeah.
at 6:30?
Yeah.
Pretty correct, yes. Same.
Sounds good. Yeah. All right. Well, huge thank you to the Parks Commission for bringing us thus
You
far.
wanna, yeah. Did you wanna adjourn the meeting if we're done? Give me a time?
Any other business?
No, there's nothing else on the agenda.
Nothing else, okay.
Just need to give me an adjourn time and officially adjourn it.
So at this point, we are going to conclude the meeting, and I'd like to say thank you to all in the public who spoke today, city staff for all their work, Parks Commission for coming here and helping us out, and for planning commissioners and Parks Commissioners adding all kinds of advice. We will adjourn the meeting at 7:57.
Several of us invited you to come and walk the dike, and we